Now, as we speak, the Commerce Ministry is analyzing the impact of 26% reciprocal tariffs or import duties imposed by the US on India. This is what a senior government official has informed NDTV. Now, according to our sources, the universal 10% tariffs will come into effect on all imports into the US from the 5th of April, and the remaining 16% will come into effect from the 10th of this month. India is already negotiating a bilateral trade agreement with the US, as we have extensively covered. The two countries are aiming to finalize the first phase of the pact by fall, which is September-October of this year. But Indian government officials say it's a mixed bag and not a setback for India. This as the US president listed the high tariffs charged by India on American products as he announced reciprocal tariffs on countries across the board, declaring a 26% discounted reciprocal tariff on India. Rishabh Bhatnagar joins us with the lowdown.
Right. What we're hearing from Commerce Ministry sources is that the analysis and the potential repercussions of the tariffs imposed on India have already been started. The studies regarding the impact have already begun at the Commerce Ministry. Two sets of tariffs have been imposed in India. The first one being a common 10% tariff that has been imposed across the board on all countries that starts taking effect starting April 5th, and an additional 16% reciprocal tariff that has been imposed in India that starts taking effect on starting April 10th. Now, initially, prima facie, Commerce Ministry officials are saying that these tariffs are a mixed bag. There will be certain sectors that have been impacted negatively, but there will also be certain sectors that stand to gain because India will gain a competitive edge against other manufacturing nations like Vietnam and Indonesia. So somewhat of a mixed bag here, given that there might be scope for some sort of a competitive edge in the electronics or the IT or the automotive sector even. Another important point that is that the US president, does have the powers to reduce these tariffs as and when certain American concerns are satisfied or countries are willing to negotiate or bring down their own tariffs with regards to the US. So India is already ahead in that scenario, given that India is already on the negotiating table with the US with regards to a bilateral trade agreement, the first tranche of which will be ready by September or October this year, by fall of this year. So India already ahead on that scenario. Number three, what we're also hearing is that a more elaborate statement or an analysis is going to be coming by the Commerce Ministry during the day, and we will stay tuned to that and track that for you.
And for further clarity on the matter and to understand the larger ramifications, we have with us on the broadcast at the moment former Ambassador Manju Seth, also joining us, Head of Digital India Foundation, Dr. Arvind Gupta, and trade expert Amir Khan at the moment. Thank you so much for taking time out for us and joining us on NDTV. Mr. Khan, I'd like to begin with you. Trump's tariff package includes a 26% tariff on Indian imports, as I've mentioned. As an economist, how do you foresee this move impacting India's trade with the US, especially in sectors like pharmaceuticals, IT? Could this jeopardize India's trade surplus with the US?
Well, on the pharma front, I do see a major impact because that, as almost everybody's been saying since yesterday, pharma has in some sense been dealt with less severity. It is the other sectors that are going to see some shocks, right? Because 26% is a high rate. And given the fact that it is coming after India has made very serious overtures for a bilateral agreement, it's indeed much more than that was expected. So it's going to involve some churn in India's industrial structure for most components, for most sectors, because they are going to find it difficult to trade with India's largest trade partner, which is the US. So exports, which are already hurting, will certainly hurt for at least some time before we settle down to these higher tariffs.
Well, not many people are very optimistic about the latest slew of announcements. But let's also bring in former Ambassador Manju Seth at the moment. Ma'am, our government sources say it's a mixed bag and not a setback for India. But as a former ambassador, what diplomatic strategies should India adopt to handle what many are calling the fallout from these tariffs? Could India leverage certain strategic alliances to push back on these tariffs? Or would you say there is no room for negotiation as we speak?
I think given the way things have moved since the Prime Minister's visit, and also that the fact that discussions have begun on a bilateral trade agreement, and even then, and even though India has already announced reduction in tariffs on a few items of concern to or of interest to the US, President Trump has still gone ahead and announced these tariffs. And while saying that India is a good friend, PM Modi is a good friend, but so I think there doesn't seem to be very much, room at the moment for diplomatic negotiations. It will only be, I think, on the basis of what comes out of the bilateral trade agreement, where I think where India will, where there is flexibility, and there only will there be a bringing down of the tariffs by the US. I don't think they're going to make an exception for India, though it is an important relationship for them as well. And of course, their own industries, their own local population is going to, the common person there is going to be affected with high inflation. But I think President Trump at the moment is not focused on any of those negative fallouts. He's focused only on his tariff war, so to speak, on all countries, including friends and foes alike.
And his America First policy, obviously. But Dr. Gupta, I'd like to bring you in here as well. India's tech industry, which is one of its largest export sectors to the US, in your view, how might these new tariffs impact India's tech companies that are heavily reliant on the American market?
So I think, thank you for asking that. I think there are two things. Pharma and tech services are not currently being looked at. This is the early readout that we have. Electron and semiconductors may also eventually be part of that carve out. So, and then, you also have to see there is a lot of GCC kind of operations that happen in India, which is not really exports per se. They are their own companies operating in India, in their own countries, back offices, or the global competency centers in India, which is 1,700 plus. But a larger point, I think, that I think my panelists also talked about is that three things are clear. Number one, President Trump is going to do this regime. This is an instrument for him to negotiate with friendly and democratic countries. This is placed to our strength. That's what you have seen from the response of the government also, because, you have to remember, as Ambassador Seth said, that India was one of the fastest off the blocks to actually go on. And the moment the US representative was announced, we were the first country, literally the first country, we started meeting and negotiating and talking to them. So we really, first off the blocks, we need to make sure of 3 or 4 things: that we use our equity, our political equity, our diplomatic equity, our equation equity with the two leaders to arrive at a very good bilateral trade agreement. 2, we also use this opportunity, as the a fellow economist on the panel said, that to improve our factors of locally. This is a short-term pain, but we probably can realize that this will help us in a long-term gain. So I think that is the second thing that happened. And third thing that is, I think we have to look at even a larger picture. It opens up a window of opportunity for the China Plus strategy for India, if India is able to do the first 2 things that I said. And I think, to me, that is a very, very large opportunity. You can look at, textiles that got shifted to Bangladesh. Vietnam, of course, is the first one trying to renegotiate their own import tariffs. So I think we will see a lot of these negotiations happening. Footwear, textiles, a lot of this labor-intensive industries will need to be refactored. And then I think there is a big window of opportunity for India. I think it's global equity and global diplomatic powers to really reposition itself. So this is a short pain, but there's going to be a long-term gain in this overall.
Well, we'll wait and see. We'll have to be very patient. Though, Mr. Khan, on that note, how should India balance the need to maintain a strong trade relationship with the United States while also addressing the concerns of domestic industries that may be impacted by these tariffs? Should India turn to other markets like ASEAN or African nations for trade diversification?
That's the big elephant in the room, and those are the big questions that will emerge, the tough ones. The first one really is how are we going to deal with China now? Have we distanced ourselves too much? Should we go back to getting, to sitting down with China and leveraging that? Because we've banked too much on the fact that we are this China alternative, and that has not worked. The second is that we have to now do a lot of homework on how we are going to ensure that investment starts coming in again. There has been a lull as far as foreign investment is concerned. Even domestic investment has been very poor, and we have to ensure that our industry gets very seriously deregulated or re-regulated in a lot of ways, especially the big infrastructure areas, so that we start getting investment and look at the domestic market, which is indeed the largest domestic market in the world right now. Unless we leverage that, we are going to have a tough time. And the third point is that we need to also understand that in some sense, we are now going to fight this battle ourselves. There are no allies anymore. There is no multilateral order anymore. And therefore, each bilateral negotiation will have to be dealt with great care. Just as everybody is doing, we'll have to ensure that our bilateral agreements are done for our good, what is best in it for us. And for that, we will have to go to negotiating tables very well prepared, with very firm stances. In some sense, by already buckling under the pressure, we might have sent a signal that we are ready to go further. And that might not have been a great idea. But for now, as we go and sit with the US and with China, we need to tell everybody that, look, we are in this, we are looking at our interests. And if it means that we have to deal with each of these countries, we will do so.
Ambassador Seth, would love your views on this as well. Should India actually pursue a stronger stance on trade negotiations with the US? Or would you argue that it's wiser to maintain a more cautious conciliatory approach to preserve our overall bilateral relationship?
Yes, I think we'll have to follow a mix of the two, really, because the US is a very important strategic partner for India in all aspects. If you look at the global environment today, it is a very, very important and crucial partnership and relationship for India. So we have to do a mix of caution and also a bit of hard negotiating and see where we can leverage our strengths and our industry. Of course, we have to keep our industries well-being in mind. But also, I think the US will also understand that its industry and its whatever alternatives it has, it's not going to pick up in a day. And if very high inflation is there, they're looking at beginning manufacturing and everything in their own country and increasing jobs, etc. But that's not going to happen overnight. And I think they will have to understand that, yes, a little bit of hard negotiation from their side, but there will have to be a lot of give and take and smart negotiation on the part of India to be able to get the best deal. And of course, the US will look at its interests. India has to look at its interests. We'll have to have a mix of caution and a little bit of hard bargaining and hard negotiation. And I think we should be able to achieve a good, mutually beneficial outcome from all indications which are there.
Well, hopefully. Dr. Gupta, in terms of the tech space, talk to us about how might global tech giants like Apple or Microsoft respond to these tariffs, and how will that affect their operations in India? In fact, take us through the long-term implications for innovation if these trade barriers continue to rise in the tech sector.
I think there are two things. First, let me comment on one very important point, and then I'll address your question. One is the importance of retaliation. And I think that is what I think Pastor Seth has also said. India has been very, very constrained and very, very, reassuring on our relationships, even on the on all global platforms, we have not retaliated at all, whether it was the first issue of immigration, now the whole issue of tariffs. A lot of global leaders have already started speaking out against it. And that's okay. That's sometimes public posturing, but India has been maintaining a very neutral to positive public posturing stance. And we do understand the precariousness of talking on social media these days. So there has been a very balanced approach India has done in terms of retaliation. We have not retaliated. We will maintain more cordial relationship, and that will is paying off and will pay off in the longer term, because President Trump has been using his statements and saying his relationship with Prime Minister Modi and India. On the tech supply chains, I think India has shown to the world that it's not just a China plus strategy, it's a China minus strategy. We can build things for them without, especially electronic, in a lot of, for example, telecom networks, 4G 5G networks without China. Now, a lot of Chinese, a lot of manufacturing, the electronics manufacturing that you're seeing happening in India does have, directly or indirectly, components coming from China.
Yes.
There is a dependence. But eventually, everybody understands that this is the place where the larger semiconductors, the fabless manufacturing is going to, has the potential for, and has a more amicable relationship with the US and the rest of the world. So I think going forward, if you look, these also have to remember, supply chains don't diversify overnight.
Absolutely.
So it's a 5 to 10 year process. And in that process, I mean, it used to be 10 plus years. We can shrink that down to 5 years, 4 to 5 years. In that process, India has to play this very, very delicately, balancing the components and the things that are coming from China, and then supplying not only to the Indian market, which is very, very big, but also maybe to the US, Africa, and other markets. So does Apple, Foxconn, Google look at India? They're looking at India as not only the talent density, a new manufacturing hub, and that the improved factors of production will help there bring down cost parity. And slowly, as the ecosystem, just not the end product, but the whole ecosystem gets developed in India, that's the ultimate goal. And that's the goal that all of us are chasing together. So I don't think so. Overall, as I said, this is going to be bad for India, because the more and more we are pushed to improve our domestic factors of production, to look at domestic markets, as Economist just mentioned, I think that will help us overall bring down the costs. India is a very cost-sensitive market. So I think in the long run, if you ask me, and the long run to me is 4 to 5 years, it's not beyond that. Right. And this will play out well for India, Indian economy, Indian jobs, and overall better of the global trade.
Well, let's bring in Mr. Khan also. Mr. Khan, looking beyond the immediate tariffs, what strategic investments or reforms should India focus on then to strengthen its economy and reduce dependency on the US market?
Yes, this is a golden opportunity for us that, we've got this pressure. We have our biggest trading partner acting tough. We are going to see some lowering in our exports. So it is now very important for us to focus on what we need to do here. Firstly, I think we need to ensure that we have a larger and a fairer playing field. The message that has gone out, unfortunately, over the last few years has been that India's large industry tends towards cronyism and favors a few players. That is something that we have to assiduously work on and ensure people that no, it is a level playing field, it is free entry and free exit, and that there is a clean piece of regulation and a rule of law that applies to everybody. The second thing that we have to look at very carefully and very quickly is something that we've spoken about so many times, but investment really depends on the climate, on the legal climate, on the property rights, on land rights, and so on. We are heading in that direction. We slow down a little bit, but if we clear that, and then you will have some states that will definitely do better in attracting investment. And the third is our focus on increasing our factors of production, on increasing efficiency, on skilling, and our education sector. I must add as a footnote that it's important for us to ensure that public investment into research and innovation, at least now, is taken up seriously. We've given it, we've not looked at it at all in the past. So I think now it is high time we do that.
Well, as we wrap, Ambassador Seth, Trump's tariff policy is being described as a reciprocal tariff aimed at rebalancing trade deficits. But how do you think this stance could impact global alliances? Could it actually push India and other countries to form new trade blocs or regional pacts outside of the US's purview?
I think anything could be possible, but I think not right away.
Right.
Also because the WTO, has been undermined in all this, which was a kind of which provided an overarching framework for all countries. And the US has completely, sort of overlooked it or not taken it into consideration at all. Not right away, I think, but if this continues and if no resolution is found, new blocs might come up, even with unlikely partners, to be able to put up a concerted and joint front against the actions of the US. But I think that is unlikely, at least in the near future, because, as I mentioned, India has a very special relationship with the US, and it's an important relationship for India, and we would not like to undermine that in any way by having, going across and forming other multilateral organizations which may be confrontationist and maybe, may harm our interests in the future.
Well, we will be patient and wait and watch how this plays out. But thank you so much for joining us on NDTV.